Hello everybody, Realm Builder Guy here, and welcome back to the channel and a new historical strategy game review. If you enjoy the video, please don't forget to press the like button, and if you're new around here and don't want to miss any future strategy game content, then feel free to subscribe. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's get into today's game review. Being the history nerd that I am, thanks Dad, also with an academic background as an historian, I naturally gravitate to any historical strategy game. Turn and hex-based strategy war games are no different. I first got into the genre back in the 90s with the great tabletop game Here Come the Rebels, and it's grown ever since. Though mainly focused on the tabletop versions, I started playing PC games of this kind around 20 years ago, mainly focused on Cold War type theaters like Korea and Vietnam. So getting back into these games led me to search and see what's available for the PC these days. I quickly stumbled across a number of different titles, including WarPlan and the newly released, just last month in late April, WarPlan Pacific. The WarPlan series is developed by one-person studio Kraken Studios, aka Alvaro Sousa, and is published by Matrix Games and Slitherine, who were kind enough to send me a copy to check out. So what is WarPlan Pacific exactly? It's an operational level war game and covers all the nations at war in the Pacific Theater from December 1941 to 1945 on a giant, and I mean giant game scale, covering 62 different potential countries. You can, of course, either play as the Allies or the Axis in a number of scenarios. So now, I'll go in here and show you really quickly some of the game options. Now here you can, of course, adjust your music and your sound, your map scroll speed, my attack delay, AI move delay, attack delay. This basically shows how quickly everybody moves through and how long the after action report is shown on the screen. Here you can show how you have your different unit statistics. These are, in my opinion, the best settings. So the average combat factors and operation points for your land units, air units, operation dots, air-to-air, tactical, naval, air strategic, and naval unit statistic, naval dots, carrier size, surface size, transport size. It just gives you all the information you need. Here you can have your tooltips on, autosaves, you can do your keyboard scroll map only or do it with your mouse, so edge scrolling. I tend to have edge scrolling turned off. Your details are on, unit size, centering of the map, mini-map, always leave that on. Mouse clicks, if you want to hear them or not. Unit text bars, how the counters look. Unit hover over, which shows strength and effectiveness per unit. Diplomacy, you can also play without diplomacy. Country map, and you can just reset everything back to default. As far as modes go, you have a few different scenarios you can pick from, but you also have multiplayer system, so this is your play-by-email multiplayer mode. So when you start a new game, and click here, you have, of course, your side. You can pick Axis, Allies, or a hot seat, play solitaire, or versus in a hot seat, so you can kind of check what you want. Cannot speak today. Then here you have your different levels of experience. So historical for both basically gives no debuffs or bonuses, and you can cycle through that. Your computer plan, so either the AI goes the historical route or a random one. And then you've got a few different scenarios you can pick from. Pacific 1941. This scenario starts December 7th, 1941, with the attack at Pearl Harbor. In fact, the opening move of the game is the attack on Pearl Harbor. It allows the players to experience the full war from start to finish. Then we've got Pacific 1942. This scenario starts in May 1942, just before the Battle of Coral Sea. This allows players to skip the initial landings and get right into the carrier battle action. Then we've got China, 1937. So this replays the invasion of China until the start of the war in Europe. So this is actually pretty good intro scenario for people who want to get to know land warfare. Then we've got Okinawa, 1945. This is just a short introduction scenario so players can get a feel for the land and naval systems. So these are two I'd recommend for beginners. And of course, I've only touched on them a little bit. I wanted to go straight into Pacific 1941. And then you have the Solomons 1942, experience one of the most challenging and interesting segments of the Pacific War, equal sides, different strengths, weaknesses, and goals. So that's what you can pick from. Of course, the game then ends in 1945. So now let's go into and take a closer look at the game itself. So here's a campaign that I started. Actually, this is my first run campaign. And as one expects from a first go-around, it's not going too well. You know, it's, yeah, I'm not going to talk about the Japanese invasion of New Zealand. But for the sake of letting you see everything that makes WarPlan Pacific great and very addictive, it will do nicely. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to scroll out here. And you can do the middle mouse wheel to scroll, of course. You can use your directional keys for left, right, up, and down, or you can right-click and just move your mouse around, or you can do edge scrolling, which I personally don't like. But if I scroll all the way out, you can see here, it is a giant map. So you've got the west coast of the US, you have all the Pacific Islands, Australia, a little bit of New Zealand, and then it really starts here, all of Asia. Now, if you compare this to the original war plan, which focused just on Europe, it's actually the scale, it's the same size map, but everything has been basically halved in scale because it's actually larger. If they would go with the exact same scale for hexes, movement, all that kind of stuff, supply range, it would be an unmanageable game, to be honest. But as you can see, the map is hex-based. We scroll down here, you can see here are the hexes, though you can choose to switch the hexes off. That's simply up here or by pressing H. I personally like to keep the hexes on just because it's a hex-based game. It includes 15 different terrain types that vary in the impacts they have on movement, combat, airfield capacity, etc. You also find 12 different resource types, including 5 different strategic resources. The map also features a fog of war. Now, you can see where the enemy is, but I have no idea what the enemy units are. And detection levels that determine information on said units. Like here, this is on the front line. I can see exactly who this is. Now you get a little further away. I have no idea. These are air units, even though it looks like an airfield. I have no idea because we don't have that type of recon. Finally, there are also 5 different weather conditions that add layers of challenge. We go here, here's the weather button. Scroll out here, where we go. We can also press W. But you can see here there are raindrops, and then sometimes you can, I don't know if they have it here, not right now, but you would have snow in some places, heavy rain or not so heavy rain. You can just turn that on and off. I like to have it on because weather does impact certain aspects of the game. So country management is actually an important part of this game. Managing your alliance countries is critical, absolutely critical. Here you need to keep an eye on key resources that are needed to build and move units, trade mechanics, convoys, and more. You also have advancements, which you could also call research, that help you build better units during the course of the war. You also have diplomacy. So if we go through here in build, you can see the production of your different countries. Now I am playing as the Allies, so you have them all here. Soviet Union is still listed, even though they are still neutral. You can see your economy, what it produces and what it has, the general upkeep costs, and this is what you have in your stockpile. This is what you build off of. You build different types of army units with different advancements. You can give them names. You can do assault, anti-tank. You have different naval types, air force types, and support units as well. Transport's very important. Merchant Marines, very important in the beginning, especially. Then you have your convoys and escorts. Now, this is essentially trade. So you see here, we've got a convoy going to Australia from the UK. We can click on UK, you click on Australia, and you can create a trade. You can move things over. Now, everything's already maxed out, but I can kind of show you that. Here, if we want to create a trade, we'll just go to the maximum amount for all of these and create a trade, and trade has been created with Australia. It is now down here. Here you also see the convoys and the escorts you can assign to convoys. It's at max 10, and 10 gives you a lot of strength. Now here the key thing is when you're looking at trade, because of course you need production stockpiles and you need stockpiles of oil to produce units and move units. You can see here Canada doesn't have much. Communist China has almost nothing, but they're landlocked, so it's a little hard. But the Burma Road gets them their units. Then you have India on here, Australia, and China. And you can see who is lagging in what. If they don't have enough stockpile production or oil, they can't produce units or move units. Then your advancements here, like I said, this is basically tech research. Now, this isn't optimized right now. This is kind of what the game gave me, and I stuck with it and kind of messed around with it a little bit. But you can see here, if we go to anti-tank, right now, where we are and where we are advancing through in our different research. That's why it's called advancement. You have your Soviet Union and China. These are the major ones here. You don't have Australia or anybody else like that. Then you have your war panel here. This is your diplomacy screen. And as you can see here, we have different actions we could take. Depending, we can declare war on the Soviet Union and on Mongolia, but there's no point right now. Status is the percentage chance that are going to come into the war. The morale shows when the morale goes to 0 or breaks if they would surrender. We do have a few. The Dutch East Indies and Indochina, New Zealand, and the Philippines have all already capitulated to Japan. So yeah, it's not an easy game. Then you have reports where you can see how things are going, your combat log, and then your deployment, which is also your production queue. And you can see here who is ready to be deployed right now. You just click on them, click on deploy. This is a UK unit, so I'll show you how that goes real quick. I know where they're going to deploy because the only UK base of operations is down here, which is essentially supposed to be South Africa. You take the #1 commandos. This is a Marine assault unit. Click deploy, and now they are deployed in Pretoria. Then you can, once you're ready for it, you can move them into position here to become transport. But obviously they can't do that right now. But there you can see the basic movement. Another very important thing to keep in mind is supply. As the case with any good strategy game, supply and logistics are crucial to achieving success. WarPlan Pacific has an intuitive supply system and UI that quickly lets you see where things stand and what you need to do to ensure your troops never run out of supply. Since that's really important, like really important, and really bad if they run out of supply. And we're not going to talk about what happened in Indonesia because it still kind of hurts. But aside from supply, always keep an eye on your oil levels. You should do that with your motor vehicle too at home, but especially here because without oil, you can't move. Now, if you want to see where supply is, you just click this button here or press S, and you can quickly see here, you've got your different supply sources. Headquarter units also convey supply, and you can quickly see here where you are out of supply or running low on supply. So the higher the number, the better it is along rail lines, and then it kind of diminishes pretty quickly after that. Desert spaces, jungle spaces, you run out of supply pretty quickly. So you do have to keep an eye on that because losing supply means operationally you're going to have problems. Here we've got this Japanese unit completely circled in, so their supply is going to be dropping more and more and more with time, and then we can more easily run them over. So supply, very important. It adds a dynamic to the game, so this isn't just a map painting war game where you just crank through and you can just leave units. I mean, one of the important ones here is we look at this naval unit. They have 1 supply left, so that means they have 1 turn left until they're out of supply. They're also facing a naval unit here. Let's see, this is a 1-ship battle group from Japan. So if he needs to be resupplied after this turn, so we just moved him out there. If we go down here somewhere, we need to find a port. Ports offer supply in this game, so you can move to any friendly controlled port. We'll move him. We got to move him out of here. And there we go down the south. He's going to have to move down here next turn to be back in supply. Normally, I wouldn't have moved him out of supply, but for the case of this and moving him away from that Japanese fleet, that was very, very important. This also brings me to movement and action. So let's find a unit here. Let's find one down here. Let's pick these guys right here. So each unit has a certain amount of operation points. You can see that is that second number here. It's a number 5. So the operation points, these get taken up through movement, and the terrain does dictate the cost. You can see it takes all 5 operation movements to move through this heavy jungle. You can also use railways and specific jump points for faster naval movement. To show you what I mean by that, see if I have anybody here that can do rail move. Here, these guys can do a rail move. This is a U.S. 2nd Marine Corps. I want to move them down here to this front, so we can do a rail move all the way across here, and there they are. Now, when I talk about a jump point, you can see one right here. This is a jump point to Australia. So if we put a naval unit into here, it'll take an extra turn, and they will then pop up right down here. So let's take this one right here. This is a bomber group. We are going to send them to India. Right click, and you can see fleet will be at destination in 1 turn. So in a turn, they will come out right over here, and I can move them over to India. So now, speaking of units, you can do so much with units. You can merge them, you can split them, repair, reinforce, resupply, and upgrade various units. So this is an army unit. You can see here, strength. They're at 13 of a possible 30. I could split the army into corps and divisions and move them around a little bit more. Here you can see the first number here, that is your average combat stats. So we've got 1 attack, 1 defend. So these are not great units here in China, but you can kind of see the picture. There are other ones that are significantly better. You can see what they are. These are their operation points, anti-air, supply use. Here you can see how much supply they have. 3 supply, 3 is like your average, kind of what you want. Your experience, this goes up the more combat they have. The effectiveness, 41%. They're a little down on effectiveness, gotten hit pretty hard. And then here you can see their strength, how many there are left. If you're down to 0, they're gone. Here you can see also their stats: firearms, guns, artillery, anti-air, defense, range, and oil use. Oil use is 0 for them, so no worries there. Range, it's just 1 adjacent. You can also upgrade your units. You can see here we've got 117 specialty points, so we can change what we want them to be. Now, we're dealing with a lot of rivers here in this area of Asia. So we're looking here, Mekong, we've got a river here, then we've got another river coming across here. So I'm going to turn them into an engineer unit, and now you can see they have the engineer flag here and here. And that means it's a 50% the penalty that otherwise they would have endured by crossing or combat across a river is negated. You know, I mean, these guys here, if we want to attack, you can see here, there's a little river symbol and a hill symbol. So that is not good. And you can also see 2 shovels. That means they are going against a severely entrenched enemy. This would not be an advisable combat, but I will get into combat here in a minute. Now, other options you have with your counters is what they look like. So if we go here, I've got counter set 2 because I just kind of like to quickly see what they are. You can also go to counter set 1. So this is your NATO counter set. This is maybe something you're very used to from tabletop. I just kind of like the silhouette out counter set. It just, I don't know. I like it personally. But obviously the NATO counter set gives you everything you need as well. It's just whatever your graphical preference is. I do like the silhouette counter set also because when it comes to command HQs, I can quickly see what nation they are. The same with, let's see here. You can see with these, they've got a little symbol with the Navy, so you can quickly see what country they are with, because there is slightly similar shading, so this just adds a little bit of differentiation for me. Now, WarPlan Pacific is, of course, a war game, so you obviously want to know how the combat system works and looks. Combat takes place on land, of course, with multi-hex attacks based on operation points, allowing for multiple moves and attacks. On air, where you can attack selected targets and may automatically support land attacks, attack supply convoys, and protect convoys. And of course on sea, where fleet and raider modes affect detection, night action, surface, pursuit, sub-hunter, and carrier combat are also available. If we take a look at a specific combat situation on land, we'll just go here with this scenario again. We can see that instead of giving you the predicted casualties, like in some games, the first number will predict how many casualties you will take, the second number will predict how many casualties the enemy will take. Here, you are given odds. So these are 1 to 2 odds on how likely you are to have a positive or negative outcome from an engagement. I personally really like this system since it adds a bit of a gamble, and even good odds can produce less than optimal results. Terrain, of course, has an effect on combat stats. You can see here we're dealing with an entrenched enemy target, and they are in hills, so they have some bonuses. That's a 1 to 2 odds. Let's play this one out and show you real quick. You can see 0-0. And there was that little delay. You can extend that delay that shows you the after action report. No side suffered casualties, but of course you keep on assaulting them and eventually they break down. But you know, our odds have decreased. These have 1 to 2. This is an attack I would not recommend because they are entrenched and you are attacking across a river. You will get suffer heavy losses here. There you can see the 1. So the first number that comes up in green is the losses for an attacker. The red numbers show the losses for the defender. And you can do multiple attacks depending on how many operation points you have. But again, now it keeps on breaking down and is not worth it. Now they are still, their strength is half. So you can see here it shows that's the Japanese 28th Army. We've cut their strength in half, but they are still entrenchment too. So they're still very entrenched. They will be very hard to break. I want to break them so we can push through here and help out our Indian forces here in Burma that are trying to defend Rangoon. So how do you actually win the game? Well, the game ends in 1945, and the side with the most victory points at that date wins the war in the Pacific. To help guide your strategy, there are certain victory point locations on the map that you can see by clicking here. Victory objectives. There you can see where they all sit. Highlighted in yellow. If we scroll out, you can see they're all across the place. Some very, very unlikely to fall, like Delhi here, and other ones, well, it's already not looking good. If I come over here, the Japanese just broke through in Changsha. Changsha is a victory objective. Now, what's great about this system is it lets you kind of dictate your strategy. How do you want to go about taking what locations to defend, and which locations are not defensible? Now, this is still July 19th, 1942. So there's still plenty of time in the war. So knowing that the US and British forces aren't quite here yet, I'm not panicking. There's still plenty of time. We're going to lose like it did historically. They lost in a lot of areas before enough British, Australian, and American troops were able to land, both at sea, air, and of course the land units to help out India, to help out China, and push the Japanese back. There are also areas like the Philippines that have fallen, Dutch East India or the Indonesia has fallen already. Then we've got a big battle here in Papua New Guinea, very strategically important, and of course all of these Pacific islands. This is going to be quite the battle. Here, as you can see, the Japanese already have a lot of different groups here. We've got a one ship in here with an infantry division. So what that tells me is they are going to land here in Papua New Guinea. Now, we have a few units here that are already waiting for them, so they are trying to land and take Papua New Guinea. We also have US 7th Defensive Battery right over here. We can move them back. They are an elite unit, so they can do some damage. But yeah, they're going to try to land. Here we've got 3 ships in this unit. Then we've got a small formation unknown and 9 ships in this this group right here. This naval group has 10 ships, including 6 carrier divisions. And then out here, we've got 2 ships. So these are all strategically important because, again, you got to try to break through. Then you've got your convoy lines here. We can go to, so we've got our logistics. You can turn those on and off. These are all roads and railways and so on. If we go to trade convoys, so those are your general logistic routes. If we go to, where are we here? Trade convoys. This shows you all the different convoy routes, the key important ones. So disrupting these convoys is really important. So that's where you want to send submarines, as well as just battle groups and so on in here. I'm just clicking on everything. And what you can do, let me find one here. These guys here. This is Houston. This is a cruiser group, and they are set on raider. You can either be a fleet or a raider. Raiders go in. They're harder to detect by the enemy, and they will disrupt convoys. So disrupting the South China Sea is extremely important. Now, you naturally escort convoys by putting a certain battle group, naval group, into an area because they have a 24 hex zone of control. So anything within 24 hexes, they are essentially a very well-armed convoy escort. So there we have all the different general options. Gives you a good feel for what WarPlan Pacific is. In my opinion, WarPlan Pacific is an excellent game. It's extremely addictive, with the just one more turn phenomenon catching me on a consistent basis. It's not just a combat game. With so many variables to manage, that strategy is key, but not so many variables that it's overwhelming. Obviously, it's not a graphically overwhelming, amazing game. It ain't Total War, but that's not what it's meant to be. WarPlan Pacific and other games like it strive to capture the tabletop feel and deliver an enhanced version to the PC. And this game does so magnificently. There are a few minor gripes I have. A, it needs more tooltips when you hover over items, and B, more options for counter graphics would be great. The ones that are in the game are fine, but another option or two really wouldn't hurt. So should you buy it? I always hate to tell people what to do with their money, but if you like this time period in theater, and from the looks of this review, it kind of tickles your fancy, then I feel the $39.99 is well spent. It has a ton of replayability, so many different scenarios. You throw in multiplayer and local hot seat and so on. It's just hours and hours, hundreds of hours of gameplay in here. Right now, WarPlan Pacific is only available, though, through the Matrix Game Store for PC, but they did say that it will come to Steam in the future. The original WarPlan, so which is just Europe, which they should probably rebrand WarPlan Europe, is actually available on Steam, so you can check that out. The link to the Matrix Game Store page where you can buy WarPlan Pacific is in the description. So thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to leave a like, as it really helps the channel. If you haven't done so already and don't want to miss out on any other strategy game content, please consider subscribing. You can also find links to Twitter, Twitch, Discord, and Patreon in the description below. This has been Realm Builder Guy, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.